Another edition here of Getting There with Gaz, and this is an interesting one. We are very close to the Super Bowl matchup this year, 2021 February, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you're watching on the visual, my team, I'm rocking my shirt right now, versus my guy Nick, who's joining us, got his Packer shirt on. I'm sorry. We don't have time to talk about the NFC title game. I'm sorry.
Tough one,
Buccaneers.
still recovering.
Yes, I know. Buccaneers versus Chiefs is this year's Super Bowl. And what we're going to get into today is kind of a two-part episode. Part one is going to be the story of how I was thrown out of a Super Bowl. In part two, I'm calling 2 nights in Miami. So we'll cover all that later on. But let's start with the Super Bowl. And we go to February 2018. This is the Super Bowl that featured the New England Patriots taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I was covering the event for my former radio station. Nick was covering an event for, I can say your station you were covering it for, right?
Yeah, I'm the unpaid, unofficial assistant to the assistant producer is my title, I think.
At 99.1 Sioux Falls for ESPN's affiliate out there. Stu Gotz's favorite ESPN affiliate.
Yes. Yeah, that actually is very true.
So we're both covering the event in an event called Radio Row. So again, like you've heard in past podcasts, I'm going to toss to Nick sometimes for some terms you might not be familiar with in sports radio. For those that don't know what the term Radio Row is or what the event is, kind of explain to us a little bit why we're there for an event called the Radio Row.
So Radio Row is something, and I can't even remember when they started this, but it's been for as long as probably you've been in radio. But it was basically, it's a week-long Monday to Friday, and some people do Saturday event where all these radio stations, whether you're local, national, I mean, they got bums like us out there sitting next to, you know, true ESPN, Stephen A, and, you know, whoever else, you know, all the Fox guys are out there. So basically they bring all these athletes in and we get to interview them for, you know, 5-6 days. And when I say it's a zoo, it is a literal zoo. Because there's, I mean, how many stations? I think
over 100, right?
Over
at least,
yeah,
all across the country, all across the world.
There's probably 100 of us, just affiliates, and then you get, you know, these local guys down from, you know, God knows Jacksonville, Florida, who, you know, I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds, and there's people from England. I think we got Jeff Turn and I got stuck next to the England people probably 3 times. One year, which is fine, but you know, it's just a little different version of radio. And a lot of times it's not just, you know, talking about the Super Bowl. It's, you know, you get to see guys like, you know, from the Packers who, you know, 2 years ago missed it. And we got to talk, you know, about, oh, you know, what a tough loss. You get to talk to some of that. There's a lot of guys, and well, most of them are out there promoting some sort of, whether it's a charity or it's a product, and they get paid to be out there. So they're out there and they're actually willing to talk. It's not like they're just out there moping around. So it's a pretty cool experience. I mean, it's when the first year I was out in San Francisco, and there were, you know, that's what, 3 hours from LA or something like that, 4 hours from LA. So their movie stars are running around, you know, and Ryan Gosling's out there, and who's the guy that plays Thor? Hemsworth's out there, and I mean, it's a literal zoo, and everyone's running around trying to get, you know, all these people to talk to them. It's an awesome time. It's a fun time. It's you don't sleep a whole lot because you get up. You got to be there about 8 or 9 to start doing interviews, and you do, you know, about 10 hours of interviews, and it's just a fun experience. It's something that I think I'm hoping that people can. After this year can, you know, make it out if you're in the local area. But I think it's coming back to New York eventually here, isn't it?
I hope so. And I'm glad you mentioned New York there, because you mentioned, when did Radio Row start? The legend goes that Mike and the Mad Dog, the legendary sports talk radio show in the city, were the first to ever do Radio Row. And the concept was, let's just go to the city that's hosting the Super Bowl. And like you just said, what celebrities, what athletes, what past people are promoting things. The thought process is, hey, if all the biggest news outlets, radio outlets are all in one city, one weekend. Let us, athletes, businesses, celebrities, go there and get on the air with them. Now,
Oh yeah.
I don't want to dive too deep into the booking process of how interviews happen. I think there's a great piece from The Ringer that was done last 2020 that's really good, that breaks down exactly what happens. But basically,
Oh
like, you
yeah,
just
yeah.
yeah,
If someone's
you
really interested, Google that because that's a really good piece.
oh yeah, and basically sometimes you might have somebody on your show and you might not, just because there's some listeners in Syracuse. Can we quickly tell the McNabb story from Miami, just real quick, and then we'll go on to when I got thrown to Minnesota. I just
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah,
Syracuse people will enjoy the McNabb story.
yeah. So Jeff, for whatever reason, and myself have made and we're not. I mean, again, I don't have a whole lot to do with these guys outside of Jeff and I's relationship and the assistant to the assistant producer of Overtime. But for whatever reason, we have always done a very good job on relationship building, and I think that's a large part of why I get to go every year, is because I had, I had 6 emails already the last 2 days from people that, hey, too bad we can't, we'll see you next year in LA. So and Jeff, if you don't know Jeff turned, and he's okay that I'm saying this because he's one of my good friends, so he's okay, is the biggest suck up you will ever meet in the world. So he knows how to work all these angles. So we get these guys, that, I mean, we had Dan Marino on one year going on, affiliate ESPN. Now, not talking about an affiliate, but he's probably a top A-lister that would normally go to a huge market. So we, I don't remember who had him, but I think Holly had him. But Holly comes over and goes, you guys want Donovan McNabb? And we're like, yeah. I mean, that'd be okay for, yeah, we'll take him. It's not a huge area for us because, Sioux Falls, Minneapolis, Iowa, Nebraska, not a huge McNabb fan, but I had remembered that you, being a Syracuse guy, loved it. I knew this was your hero.
Yes, this is my guy.
Yes, your hero. So I told Jeff, I'm like, hey, like, we gotta let Gaz and the boys get him because that'll make their day. So I don't remember. Did we come over? I think we gave
No.
we
So what
booked him.
happens is
I don't remember the exact details on how it planned out, but
So what happens is basically you're like 7 tables away. You're like due north, I'll call it. So
yeah.
I see you waving like a nut.
Oh,
You're
that's
waving.
right. That's right.
And
That's right.
McNabb is like in front of you or like sitting with his headphones on, and you're just like, McNabb, your show, look at your phone. And I'm like, what? So you text me, you're like, hey, McNabb can't come on our show. I told him to just come to your show instead.
Oh,
And I'm like,
yeah. Okay,
oh
that's what
my
happened. That's
God.
right.
They had like an open time slot at the same time we had an open time
Yeah.
slot. So I'm like, oh my God. Like, Donovan McNabb is coming over. He's going to be on the show. I'm thrilled. Now,
Some of these things just run together for me because there's so
yeah.
much.
But what happens next is that because of how Radio Row was set up, it's in a convention center.
Mhm.
You guys that year in Miami were on the other side of the convention center.
Yeah.
So probably what happens, and this is what my heart believes.
We were probably 100 yards from you,
Yeah.
honestly. At that, I mean, by the time you get from the table to the table and all the looping around you had to do.
So what happens is basically what I believe happens is his booker, McNabb's booker, his agent, sees he's got an interview coming up 100 yards away, does that interview, and he's like, I'm not walking 100 yards back for another 10-minute hit in Albany. So I'm like devastated. I'm like, no.
So, we had actually, because and this is actually true because we did have him booked. Like, we had a time slot for him. But knowing you wanted it, we're like, all right, let's send him over there because, I mean, again, that's huge for your guys' area. And, like, again, it's your boy. So we'll hook you up. You scratch our back, and that's kind of how it goes out there, too. I mean, you trade contact info. And if I remember, he was going on, I think he was going on Fox. And the Fox stage was at the very other corner.
Yes.
He didn't want to walk from the Fox stage booth to your guys' booth. And I remember texting you and I was crushed. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, we had this perfectly set up. And I remember the whole rest of the night you gave me shit about it because you were just like, you made Donovan not want to come over. Like, I'm like, no, that is not what happened.
So yeah, that was an awesome story. And what made it even cooler was that Dana White, which is, here, we're just dropping names left and right. Dana White came over like 10 minutes after McNabb stiffed me. And that's how my co-host Levac opened the interview. He's like, can you believe McNabb stiffed
Oh,
Goss? He's
that's
like,
right. Yeah.
Dana, how dare McNabb do that to you guys? So Dana White, like, probably heard the same UFC questions 100 times. So he kind of ripped into McNabb, which, although he's my hero, it was pretty funny. So,
Yeah.
all right. So let's go back, although that's a Miami story. So let's go to Minnesota. So just to clarify this part, because this is going to get a little confusing for some people. When you're at Radio Row, you have a pass. So there's security, so you kind of just show your pass and you go in.
Yep.
Some fans are there, they're walking around, but for you to actually sit at your table and do your thing, you have a pass.
I've got that
Now,
actually sitting right here.
yeah. So what
Somewhere.
happens though is that when you have your Radio Row pass, that is not the pass to the Super Bowl. So although
No.
you are covering a Super Bowl event, although you're covering media night, which is a big event with a lot of the players and coaches
Yeah.
that Monday of that week, you are not scheduled to go to the game. So this is where
Actually, give me a
things.
sec here, just
Yeah,
so you
go
can
ahead.
get a visual. Let me find those because I've got
Yeah.
them right here.
While you're looking for your pass, I'm going to set up this story too, because what I decide to do is when we're staying at Minnesota that year, we decide to stay in the media hotel. Basically, the media hotel means more media people. It's going to be a little easier to travel. Buses, shuttles. You don't have to worry about Ubers and stuff. So that's why we're staying at the media hotel. But we were staying at the media hotel, which means we had to stay all 8 nights. So, AKA, that means we got in Sunday, 1 week ahead of the Super Bowl, and we would leave Monday morning. The media hotel, 8 days, totally
Where
makes
were
sense.
you guys that year?
We were somewhere in Minnesota. We were like a shuttle ride, like a 5-minute shuttle ride away from the Mall of America.
Oh yes, you guys were down in Bloomington, and
Yes.
I never got on the bus because I was living in downtown Minneapolis at the time.
Right.
So
Yes.
that's why. Okay, that makes sense then. Why you guys were there? Okay.
So for those on YouTube, do you have the different passes between
Yeah.
the Super
So
Bowl
and
and
this is
Radio Row?
actually that same year. So here's what we get to go, and we can show these, right? It doesn't matter anymore.
It's over now. You
over
can't make
there.
fake ones now.
So this is what you normally get to get into Radio Row, and you have the media and the F and the X, so you can get into different places. Basically, anything in Radio Row, this is you can get wherever you want. Now, game day, you get one of these big honking things. And you have to have this around your neck the whole entire game. Otherwise, you get escorted out of the facility by security.
Yes. Now, one quick thing before we move on, because this is getting there with Gaz, and we're talking about lessons and things to learn. What Nick did there is great for our podcast. If you are a young media member or a media member going to a big event, please never, ever, ever post your media pass on social media. I know people want the likes. I know you want the retweets. It is a super no-no. And I'm probably some people listening like, wait, what? Why is it a big no-no? Like, people want to see that you're going to the game. Basically, what happened over time is that when people would post it on social, other people would see it, make a carbon copy, and get into the game. So that's a huge no-no. Like, they will legit throw you out of the event. Yeah.
And there's a lot of, I mean, there's a chance you may not get to go again because they take it very seriously. And as they should for security reasons. I mean, you got top-notch, athletes, celebrities there. And also, I mean, there's how many people in a giant room, for safety reasons. There's crazy people out there. They don't want people making passes for that.
And I'm smiling not because of what you said, but because it's a weird transition to what I'm about to talk about next, which is how I get in. So what people don't know is that on Super Bowl Sunday, you as a media member have to get on a bus. It's not like all the media members are traveling in separate Ubers or cars and everything else. There is a separate bus scheduled, and buses, I should say, multiple buses scheduled for media members. So what happens for me is that Levac has gone back home, and I'm by myself in Minnesota. So I can just hang out and watch the Super Bowl, but I'm like, hey, I went to the just by myself. I could go get some lunch, but I like, let's try it. I know I don't have the pass, but I'm going to try to get into the Super Bowl. So like Nick just showed you on the visual side on YouTube here, clearly the passes look different. So what I've been told is this, Nick, is that, guys, you will not even get on the bus. Like, you will not get on the bus without the game pass. So sure enough, I show up in a suit and tie, which is also another reminder here. If you want to try to pull something off like this, look good. If you look professional, if I showed up in sweats and a hoodie, they probably didn't think I was a media member. But I went full suit and tie to look good. And I said, okay. So what I did was to get on the bus, I'm like, all right, here's my shot. They're probably going to check my pass. I had my pass backwards. So Nick, just kind of for the YouTube people, show the backs of the passes.
So this is the one that he had. This is just the Radio Row one.
Right.
And the back of it just looks like this. And this does scan. So this is what they scan if you get put into question.
So what I did
And
was I
by the
just had
way, let me
yeah, go
preface
ahead.
it this way too. To get into all this, to get a pass for this, you have to go through a full round FBI background check. Like 100% you do. They run your whole, like, it's not like a just, oh, you work for so and so, you get a pass. Like, you get put through the whole system to make sure that you're not a lunatic.
Yeah. Hey, look, I'm not a lunatic. I'm a media
No,
member trying to
no.
go to the Super Bowl. Like, I'm just
Right,
trying to
yeah.
go. Right. So what happens is I have the pass backwards. So someone sees the pass around my neck and they say, okay, the kid's got the pass, get him on the bus. So I walk right on the bus. So now I'm not fooling around though. Like, I don't know. I literally know nobody. Nobody. And what I do to not make any waves, to be quiet, I sit in the first seat behind the driver. Now, the person who sits next to me is a legendary sports writer. It's a sports writer that I grew up like idolizing. I don't want to say his name because I don't want to act like he's like somehow my accomplice in this whole story. But whoever is your favorite sports writer growing up, imagine you're trying to sneak into the Super Bowl or at least try to get in with a media pass, and your favorite sports writer of whoever you grew up reading is now sitting next to you on the bus. And it's like, oh my God, so and so is sitting right next to me and I'm trying to sneak into the Super Bowl. Like, they're going to walk around like they're going to check tickets for a train here in a second and they're going to throw me off this bus. But I'm like, okay, let's not hope that happens. So sure enough, the bus starts and I'm in motion. Here we go. We're going to the Super Bowl. So I'm sure you remember this part. We get off the bus, and I don't know if you guys had to deal with this. There was some type of delay. I don't know if it was too many buses showed up at the same time, or they were trying to like have one bus get off of the other.
See,
We were super far away from where we were supposed to check in.
again, I didn't get on the bus because I was living
Oh,
only
right.
a mile and a
Okay.
half down from the stadium, so I huffed it. But I do remember there, for whatever reason, I don't know if there was a breach or something, but we ended up having to walk like um an extra mile in a zigzag
Yes.
line to get in. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Like, it
So,
was the most obnoxious thing I've ever seen.
but as obnoxious as it is, it's great for me because no one knows what they're doing. So I'm blending in.
Oh,
This is
sure,
perfect.
yeah.
I'm like, I'm just going to follow the confused mob of media members. So now I
Also,
get
keep
in
in mind,
line.
everyone, it's February in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It is not warm.
I have
It
no
is
coat on. I just have the suit and tie.
freezing. It is freezing.
Yeah. So I got the sports jacket on, but I'm sitting in line. So now I'm like, what we're sitting in line for is we're going to go to a tent. So basically, the tent is going to be where you check equipment.
Yep,
If you've
yep.
got a television camera, if you've got anything. So when you walk into this tent, they're going to check your pass. Okay. So I'm like, you know what? I'll probably get to the start of this tent. They'll check my pass. I'll get thrown out. Okay. I gave it a shot. So I get up to the tent. Sure enough, they're checking you like you're in the airport. I get through. Another checkpoint completed.
Didn't they
So now,
scan your thing? Didn't they scan your badge?
no,
That's scary.
no.
That is scary.
Oh, yeah. So now, dude, now I'm into the tent. So now I'm into the tent, full suit and tie. I have a pass on. Again, media member, not being a lunatic. All I have is intentions to cover the game and go to the Super Bowl. So now I'm in the tent. And now you start seeing like all the super popular, all the media members are in this tent. But there's a second thing where now they're spreading you off to the dog sniffing, drug, all that stuff where it's like getting intense. The
Yeah.
cops are there. This is where it's like getting cranked up a level. Like, okay, let's see if I can actually go
Are you
further. This is
sweating at
probably
this point?
no. See, here's the thing. I'm like my heart's beating, but I can't look nervous because if I
Oh,
look
sure.
nervous, I'm trying to play it cool.
Because you got to
Which if
sell it.
people
Yeah.
right, if people know me, they're like, "Gosh, is probably stumbling around right now." Like he's acting like he was cool. He saw the dog. He ate
Uncomfortable.
the dogs. Right? No chance he's acting cool right now. So now I walk up to um, the check-in basically. Like there's another like they're gonna wand you down for a second time. The cops are there. The drug sniffing dogs are there and everything else. So I'm like, all right, this is where I'm definitely gonna get busted. I have the pass on backwards. I've never flipped it over. Sure enough, they let me through. I'm like, oh my God, I did it. I got through 3 checkpoints as a media member, wearing the pass, Radio Row pass, and I'm in. Nick, I'm telling you, I get out of the tent and there it is. US Bank Stadium, right? Is that what it's still called in
Yeah, US
Minnesota?
Bank. Yep, yep.
Yeah. So I walk out of the tent and there it is. I can see it. I'm walking to the Super Bowl. Now, there's a fork in the road at this point. I can go left where it says media check in, or I can just walk to the Super Bowl. So like, all right, well, if I go left and I try to go to this media check-in, I'm clearly going to get checked for a pass. So I'm not going left. And the media check-in is further away from the building. So it's probably just guys sitting there doing their work, or girls, guys or girls sitting there doing their work, prepping their laptops, getting their pregame stories ready.
Okay.
So I just start walking. So I'm going, like, I'm just walking by security. I got my pass around my neck, blah, blah, blah. No issues, no issues. I'm probably, I don't know, 500 yards away, 400 yards away. I can see it. I can see like the stadium coming. And I get stopped by a New York Giants intern and says, "Hey, can I see your pass?" I'm like, "Oh no, I'm busted."
A New York Giant. Oh, like I got you.
An
Okay.
intern. So like basically a guy working media relations. And I say that
Yeah.
because we covered Giants training camp before. I kind of knew who the people were. This guy didn't recognize me or know who I was because we had covered camp before.
Sure.
So I flipped over my pass and he looked at it. And then he looked up at me and he looked back down and goes, "Hey, so and so." This is now he's calling over the then director of the New York Giants staff. I'm like, "Oh no, I'm busted." I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm caught. Now, the intern easily could have looked at the pass, saw it was me. You've already seen the video on the visual side,
Yeah.
and sent me on my way. But because he's an intern, he doesn't want to get in trouble. He brings over his boss. So now the boss comes over and he's like, "How'd you get in?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "That's not the right pass." I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know. What do you mean it's not the right pass? I have a pass." Like
Always
now,
plead
of
ignorance.
course, right
Plead
now, and
ignorance.
now I'm playing stupid. Like I don't know. He's like, "Okay." He's like, "You got to go." I'm like, "All right." So I turn right around and I start walking out. But, I think I'm slick because I start walking out and I start turning right instead of out of the tent. That's where that media check-in is. So I kind of like start to veer a little bit, not running by these stretch, like slowly walking. But what I don't realize is the guy is right behind me. Like the horror movie film, like the guy,
Yeah.
he's right behind. Guys, he's behind you. Turn around. And then he puts his hand on my shoulder. I'm like, "Oh." He's like, "No, you're going the wrong way, man." I'm like, "Oh no." So now here comes the walk of shame. So here I am getting escorted out of the Super Bowl by the New York Giants security. Now, for those of you who
Why
know
would
yeah, go ahead.
why okay, let me back up here for a little bit. Why are they just working security? I didn't know
Yeah.
that they
So
were there.
there's a path
That's
from the
news to
media center.
me.
So now I'm getting ticked. I didn't know this part of the. Did you not have to go through any of these checkpoints when you were walking to the
No.
stadium? What the hell? So
No.
you're
I
telling me I
mean,
could
I
just.
went through the checkpoints,
Oh,
but no, I didn't talk to anybody. I mean, I didn't get like I don't remember the tent either.
now hang on a second. Do you remember what
Maybe
time it
I
was?
went
Because I went at like noon or 1 o'clock. Maybe you went far closer to
uh
kickoff.
I did. I went close to kickoff. And it
Oh no!
was yeah. So I bet that was what it was.
Oh, I'm learning this for the first time as we're taping
Yeah.
this. I
So
just
we so
waited
I
like
mean I went
5
through the
hours
tents,
to
but
cover this.
there was like a couple people and and no one really like said much. I
Oh,
mean they looked at my computer and stuff, but like when I was walking through there were not a whole lot of people because I mean obviously the media gets to go on certain thing and then everybody else. So like I remember walking in, going through the once you got through the tent with the dogs, it was a straight beeline to the stadium. Now, I might have
no.
gone. Here's my thing though, is I was covering games up there, so I might have gone in the old media door. So that could be another thing. Because
Oh, okay. So that makes, you know what?
so that might be I might have gone in the traditional media door. So
That makes
that might be the difference here.
good. I'm going to believe that's the case. I'm
I
going to
think
tell
let's go with
myself,
that. To make you
yeah,
feel better, let's go with that.
makes me feel a lot better. Makes me feel a lot better. So what happens now is I'm getting escorted out by the New York Giants staff. Now here's what I'm trying to do at this point. Because I think this guy knows me, but in radio, like you email with people, but you may not see them
Right.
face to face. India people, I think, especially public relations, meet so many people that I don't think they remember a ton of people's names.
No.
They just meet so many people and so many media members. So I'm getting walked out and I'm trying my best to like butter this guy up. Totally. Like, do you know that scene in Space Jam when the little mouse is talking to Sean Bradley's character? Like, I love basketball. I love
Yeah.
basketball. And just gets squashed at the like that's me in real life. I don't know if I can actually legally use that cut. I might add that in on the visual or audio side later. I don't know if legally I can use that, but maybe I will for those who don't get
Throw a
that
link
Space Jam.
down at the bottom of it.
Yeah, I'll do that. So now I'm getting walked out, and then I start dropping names. I'm like, hey, do you remember 104.5, the team in Albany? We used to cover camp. So now I'm like trying to act like we're buddies, and he's like, yeah. Just give me the Sean Bradley Monstar effect, like not
Right.
hearing me. But
Right.
now imagine this. I'm getting walked through all these checkpoints back. Now you would think, oh gosh, this is like the walk of shame in college. You're holding your heels in your hand Sunday morning. This is just embarrassing.
In a
But
suit from formal the night before.
right. But here's the thing. It's honestly not that embarrassing. And you could probably give a good perspective on this because there is so much happening around you with like people going in different directions and people like I could have easily forgot my laptop. I could have easily forgot something and they're just walking me back. So as much as my buddies and
Prior
people do
to
that,
the prior to
I'm
the
not
tent,
embarrassed. I'm not.
prior to getting to the tent, it is chaos. Once you
Yeah.
get to the tent, you get everyone separates their own ways. So I mean, yeah, you could have forgot your cell phone, your laptop, your media pass. No one knows. But it's funny. I didn't know that they had team. What are they? Media relations.
Oh yeah. So every
So I'm
NFL team
sure
since oh
you
yeah.
think the intern got a raise? You think he got a permanent position for busting guys?
I hope listening to this, some interns like, that was the guy I busted. That's the guy. He's hosting the podcast now. I never heard that story. Yeah, and just to add to that, every NFL team sends all their media relations teams to the Super Bowl. They all work different jobs. So if you're wondering like how it gets staffed, these events, that's how all the NFL teams send all their people and everything else. So I'm getting walked out. Now there is a heart beating situation here where I'm like, okay, I'm getting escorted out of the Super Bowl with a fake media pass. Shouldn't say fake, with a media pass that is incorrect. I think that's a big clarification. An incorrect media pass. So I'm getting walked out with the incorrect media pass by the New York Giants staff. So I don't know what's going to happen next. Like some people freaked out. They're like, are you going to get arrested? Are you going to be thrown in jail? Or are they going to call cops on you? I'm like, for what? I'm a media member who's an idiot who tried going to cover an event as a media member. I want to continue to clarify that. Like, I didn't have any bad intentions. My intentions were to cover the game and get out. There are lunatics like Nick's mentioned that try to do stupid stuff. My goal was to go to the game, enjoy it, cover it for my station because I couldn't get a pass. That's the other question people are wondering. Hey, how come, guys, you just didn't get a pass? To that, I
There's
actually
a
got to turn to you
very,
on that. Yeah,
very,
explain this.
very,
Yeah.
very limited number of passes that go out. And the only reason that I even get one is because Jeff has young kids and Jeff doesn't want to go, and Jeff has one, so Jeff gives his to me. So that's the only reason. But I mean, like, there are, I think, maybe 100 like non-major media passes that they give out or something like small like that, I think is what Jeff told me. So it's not like it's a easy thing to just get. It's something that, you got to take time and develop a relationship, and that's what Jeff had done. So it's not like Radio Row where you can kind of get passes as long as you're an actual media member and you pass the background check. The Super Bowl pass is like something that you probably will wait to. It's almost like Green Bay Packers season tickets.
Yes.
Like there's a list. Like if you give yours up and then the next year you want one, you don't just get another one like that unless you're a big major market. It's
And I
kind of a
believe that
weird ordeal.
And I believe that's what happened one year with us in Albany was that we had gone back locally to do an event because we had a connection with the local business and we just decided not to stay that year. And that's why we've struggled since. And I can't speak to that. To your story, I think that matches exactly what you said. So I'm pretty close to
And
that
we could be,
of why we
it
can't.
could be different, but to my knowledge, from what I've been told, and I don't know if that's an official thing, but I think that's kind of how they do it. That's kind of the
We'll call it
rule.
the rumor. It's a rumor
The
out there.
rumor, yeah.
Yeah. One other thing, I got two more things to add before we move on to part two of this podcast. Did you actually sit when you go to the Super Bowl and you're covering as a media member? Did you actually sit in the media box or did you sit in the stands? Because I think some people don't realize some media members are actually in the crowd during the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So let me start this way. So in a normal game, you get to sit in the press box. The press boxes at most of these NFL stadiums is like having a suite at the games.
Yeah.
Like you get fed very well. You get good food. You get You know, it's air conditioned or heated. You get a good view of the game. The Super Bowl, in that year, if you haven't been to US Bank, the upper, the nosebleed sections are very steep. And they had makeshift put desks together for 50 of us in one section. And you actually sit in the nosebleeds, and you're probably, I think I was in 315. I don't know, maybe it says on there. I can tell you. Yep. So I was in 328, section 328, row 13, seat 1. So you're
Okay.
at the game, but you need binoculars. Which
Yeah.
shouldn't complain, but it is, you are way up there, but you're basically, you get to sit in the section, and then there's kind of like security guards that walk kind of around that section to make sure that fans don't come over and heckle any of us and stuff like that. But you actually do sit in the stands, and then there's a little makeshift desk that they build for you.
And a
So you
makeshift
actually,
lunch as well.
okay, I don't remember. I think
You
it's
didn't get
like
lunch?
I don't remember what they fed us. I mean, to be brutally honest, I was hungover that whole Super Bowl. So I was like in chronic pain, like writing my stories. I'm like, God, all right, what time is this done? This is awesome, but I am hurting.
All right. Well, I'm glad you clarified the stands thing, because there you go. For people who think like
Yeah.
Nick or other of these media members are sitting in these cushy spots, again, it's a Super Bowl. You could be covered in snow, and some people say, I don't care, I'm
Oh
at the
yeah.
Super Bowl. Just to clarify, that's what happens in some of these games where you actually are not in the media section, you're in the stands. That's why tickets are so interesting and everything else. One other thing to add before we wrap this story. When I am being escorted out by the Giants, they basically just walk me back to where I was and say, hey, you got to go. I'm like, yeah, I'm calling an Uber right now. They say, okay. That's it. Like, there was no arrest.
Yeah.
There was nothing bad.
I'll
It's just,
say,
imagine you tried sneaking into the Super Bowl. I went
yeah,
home, by the way, ordered Pizza Hut and watched the Super Bowl alone in my hotel room. I didn't want to talk.
down
I didn't
in
want to go
Bloomington.
outside. Right. I thought somebody in Bloomington is like, where's that kid from Albany? We'll get him. I don't know why the cops, Macho Man Randy Savage. Ooh, yeah, we'll get that Albany kid. Like, I don't know. But that's what I did. I just went home. They let me go. No harm, no foul. I just walked out. I got thrown out of the Super Bowl in Minnesota.
Yeah, I will say so. Jeff and have been known quite frequently to push the envelope on where we should and shouldn't be during these events. Believe it or not, and I'll just to kind of go off of your story. Wow, what year? Down in Houston. This is when we were down in Houston. We were at media night, which was at the time Monday night. I don't know if I think it's Tuesday night now, but Monday
No,
night
it's still
time.
Monday. It's still Monday
Is it
now.
still
Yeah.
Monday night?
Yeah.
Last year it wasn't. But anyway, so Monday night. So Monday night, the first night there, that's when, they do all the interviews pre-game with all the athletes, yada, yada, yada. So we're down in Houston, and I'm in the stands at media night, and I'm kind of looking over at the filming the NFL Network. And they got Kurt Warner, and I think Favre was on there, and I don't remember who else is.
Marshall Falk, maybe?
Marshall Falk, maybe. I don't
Yeah.
remember. But the only reason I remember Kurt Warner is because, and again, they had this platform set up in the stands, and then they have a stage, and they're shooting up so the fans are in the back. Well, I had been standing back there, and they got done with the show, and the guys are walking up. And I kind of look around, and I mean, it's like they're literally, these guys are walking up the aisle, and there's no ropes, there's nothing. I kind of look around, and at the time I mean, at the time I was very into health fitness. I'm like, shit, I bet you I can sneak in here. Like I look like I could be on this. Like, so I jumped into the aisle and went up with the guys.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I'm walking up the stairs, and I'm like, all right, no one's stopping me, and I'm pretty, and I think you've seen me do that. I'm pretty good at kind of blending, like,
Yeah.
So I'm kind of going up, and all of a sudden the curtain opens, and I'm in the NFL Network pre-tent, like before the show, and I just go pop down on the couch, and I'm kind of sitting around, and I kind of pretend like I'm doing something on my phone. Kurt Warner comes over and sits next to me, and And I'm like, oh God, like what did I just? He goes, hey man, how you been? Good, good. How you? How's the family? And he starts talking to me, and like I'm just playing it up because I'm like, he's either he's being really nice or he thinks I'm someone. And at the time, I had long, slicked back, hair, and I was living in Minneapolis still, so I looked like I probably could have been on TV or something,
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I'm just rolling with it. And he starts asking me questions about, how I'm liking my time at the network, and I'm just going on, and I've got my media pass. And I kind of look over, and he doesn't look, and I just flip it over real quick because I'm like, I don't want him to see that I'm not here. So and I probably had a 10-minute conversation with him, and I'm sitting in there. Randy Moss walks through, and is kind of like, looking at Kurt like, who the hell are you talking to? And I'm just letting it roll. I'm just rolling with the punches. And I go, yeah, I better get on with, the night, and, good to see you. He stands up with me, shakes my hand. He goes, good to see you. Yeah. We'll see you later. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So I jet out of here. I'm like, at the time, I'm like, maybe I should have asked him if he wanted to come on the radio show, but would that have given my cover away?
Yes, you would
So,
have. Yes.
so to your point, yes. I mean, once you get in the inner layer of some of this, like, there's so many people, and as long, there's so many, as long as you're respectful, you can probably push the envelope a little bit. So it's, I'm sure the security knew I wasn't supposed to be in there, but when I'm sitting there talking to Kurt Warner, I really doubt anyone's going to kick me out. So to your point, I mean, nothing bad ever happens. I think it's just a lot of, as long as you're respectful, most people will let you go about your business and,
Right.
go
I
on
think
with your day.
I think that's a good lesson here. The lesson of this, even though we're acting like idiots and going to places we're not
Yeah.
supposed to, if you're responsible, if you're respectable, if you are not acting like a jackass, if you're being professional, people are not going to go off on you. Like,
No.
your job is to be there to be a pro. Now, someone would say, like, you guys aren't acting like pros in this. I'm sure old school media members can be like, you should have not gone there.
Yeah.
Like, look, we're not trying to be jerks. We're trying to
No.
create experiences and
Yeah.
have conversations. Trust me, we both work in radio or have done radio stuff before. Like, that stuff, people, hopefully, if you heard this
They
podcast,
love.
you enjoy
Yeah.
these stories, because, like, it's better than asking who wins the big one Sunday. Like,
Right.
we're going to hear it every single year. So hopefully, again, those are the intentions of both Nick and I for this. So let's do this, Nick, real quick. For some of you, that's the part of the podcast you're going to love the most. Hopefully you enjoyed those Super Bowl stories from us. We're going to do today's episode a little different. So we're taping on Tuesday night. This is going to air on Friday before the Super Bowl on Sunday. We're going to stop here. We're going to say some cool things about some people who have partnered with the podcast. So stick around for that. We're going to air a second episode that's going to be available both on YouTube and both on Spotify and Apple. That if you're a fan of the show Entourage, if you like behind the scenes, bumping into celebrities, having a good time, I'm calling this one 2 Nights in Miami. Some people don't care about it. Like, some people will not have any interest in this episode coming up. I'm probably only going to do these once every like 3 months. But if you're an Entourage fan, if you're young and in your like late 20s, early 30s, and you want to have a really fun story with your friends at these really fun cities, that's what's next. So a really fun story about what went on in Miami with Nick and I.
And to just add on that, I think here's where my experience with radio is a little different. Is I have never truly been employed by these people, so I get to. I mean, I shouldn't say that I was, but not to a degree where I. So when I'd go down to these things, I've got, not just 2 nights in Miami. We can talk about Houston. We can talk about San Francisco. If you don't know, Super Bowl week for these celebrities and athletes is 6 days of partying, and it is a very fun time. I'll tell a story here, once we flip over with Gronk's dad. It's a great time to be in the young radio profession. But again, we were always up doing our job the next day. Let's make that very clear.
Okay,
so let's end it on that.
Let's end it on the Gronk tease, because I don't know that story.
No, I
flip
told you
over.
this story.
If you're interested in this stuff, flip over. If it's not your cup of tea, no worries. Let's move on to the episode. We're calling it 2 Nights in Miami with my pal Nick. It's coming up next year on Getting There with Guys.